Hi folks, so I did a video yesterday that was a combined full moon in Aries video plus a weekly overview. And the full moon in Aries, of course, is tonight. I'm recording this on October the 16th, about 5:20 p.m. local time. And there were two or three things that I wanted to follow up with in relationship to that. First and foremost, lesson learned on my part, combining a full moon in Aries video or any sort of lunation video with a weekly overview. If it's a new moon, I think it makes sense with a full moon. It just, by the time that video was done, my brain was scrambled eggs because there's so much you're looking at. So I haven't received anything. It's funny. There are times when every time I post a video that I think is not one of my better ones, and I think it's normal to kind of, when I tend to like to post every alternate day. This past week and this particular week, the week that we're in, I'm not going to be posting that much. And starting next week, I'm going to be back to my normal schedule. But bottom line is this. Just if you find nobody has said anything about the video, and very often I'm not the best gauge for the information that I'm providing, and I might post something that I'm just like, well, that was okay, and there's certainly videos that I feel that I think are useful, and I talk about them, and I say, I think that was one of my better ones, so go take a look at that. Like the Jupiter and Gemini Jupiter retrograde video I did, for example, recently. I was just like, oh, but it's not my judgment, because it's always interesting to read the comments after the fact and see what's resonating and see what's not resonating. And certainly there's plenty in the full moon video that seems to have resonated, which is fine and great. I just am concerned that there's a lot of content in that. So my first heads up and warning is to say, if you find after a certain point that video a little heavy going in terms of data and information, break it up. You don't have to sit it all out in one go. It's the full moon in Aries part that I think is going to be energetically more relevant. The transits that are actually occurring, the aspects that are occurring, I should say, between transiting planets this week are, they're there, but it's really contemplating about this full moon that I think is going to be more relevant and important. So it's the first thing I wanted to say. It was on my mind, and I was just like, I could very easily have split it into two, done a briefer weekly overview, and then spent time on the full moon in Aries, and I think it would just have been, the content would have been more digestible. Let's just put it that way. The second thing I want to mention is a little bit more intriguing and interesting. I am getting a sense that this is true both for myself and in the readings that I'm conducting and the inquiries that I'm getting. And I want to alert you to something. If you're feeling like the universe is pushing you in a certain direction or closing those corridors so that there's only one direction to go in, but that direction is entirely clear, but your intuition is telling you, if you're feeling like certain things are working and certain things are not working, or certain flows in certain directions have stopped but certain remain open, if you feel like spirit is trying to move you in a particular narrow direction, I think your instincts and intuition may be correct. And I think it has to do with the eclipses. Not with Pluto, not with Jupiter, it's really, that is how the eclipses work. They shake things around and things happen, and sometimes they can be positive. Sometimes you can feel like, you know what, this is what I should be doing. This is what res. I always say with the eclipses, which doors remain open, which doors remain closed. And very often, life is more like we're banging our head against 10 doors, and there's one door that's meant for us, and 9 will remain closed, no matter how hard we try to open it and how spiffily we're dressed and how prepared. And it's the door that's meant to us where, as I like to say, our hand barely touches the doorknob and it swings open and it pulls us in. Now, I do think that if we're looking at that door as an interview or as a meeting or something like that, then it's important for us to show up prepared and do what we need to do. You can't show up at that door and not do your bit. You can't, you know where I'm going with this. But the bottom line is, we can show up at 10 doors looking our best, and one is likely going to be meant for us, that's going to pull us in. And we are currently in the search for that door. And that door is very much linked, as far as I'm concerned, to these eclipses on the Aries Libra axis. And the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces will likely have been felt more the week before and after July the 17th and the week before and after September 17th. But this feeling of being propelled in a certain direction and the anxiety that is created by the universe kind of shaking, that is very eclipsy. And a lot of it depends on who we are as people and how prepared we are and how instinctively we've been preparing. You know, I've been saying this in these videos for months now, and I'm saying this not for you. It's not a scold for you. It's also true for me. It's like I instinctively have been knowing where things are going. And so how much are we prepared? How many actions have we taken? Who are we? To what extent are we deadline driven? To what extent are we anxiety driven? To what extent are we steady workers? All of that contributes to how things emerge and how things occur when the eclipses start to exercise that power. It may feel like a Plutonian change, but a Plutonian change is much more gradual and much more constructive in my experience. We associate certain things with Pluto and Uranus, but really what I think, this feeling that certain people are having of something feels terminal, something feels like it really is ending and I'm meant to go through a certain door, through a certain direction, and I can feel myself being directed and I know that I'm being the only way through, and it feels like the universe is basically saying, and some of it does, I'll say this, some of it does have a little bit to do with Jupiter being retrograde. I've told you with Jupiter being retrograde, if you have Jupiter direct in your chart, you're not going to be saved the way you're saved when Jupiter's direct. You're going to feel like, oh my God, that grease, that luck, that whatever it is that propel is not there. So you have to work that much harder. But the eclipses are also the universe's way of saying, I am doing this because this is the direction, this is where you need to go, this is where you need to, and it's sometimes the universe has to apply the right kind, push the right kind of buttons to get us to act in a more urgent and proactive way. We may feel like we are excited and motivated for the change and we're not resisting it, but resistance to change is really, it's inertia. If things are comfortable, we can keep contemplating change. And sometimes change occurs because the universe, you get an offer to join a company and relocate, and the company's going to take care of your relocation. So then somebody else is controlling that pull to that new venue. But that's not, sometimes it occurs based on what it is that we want to do and which direction we're trying to go in. Where does, we aren't always given a magic carpet on which we can just kind of ascend and we'll be whisked to the new. There's something we've got to create here. Remember, I've been telling you, it's not as simple as just opening a door and getting to a certain place. And we are now at October 16th, and the last eclipse was on October 2nd, solar eclipse. The second time around, the last time October 14th of 2023. Solar eclipse, corresponding lunar eclipse in Libra, March 23rd, 24th of this year, 2024. And this time around, it's like the eclipses are back around and they're just like, we gave you a heads up of what you needed to prepare for and what you needed to do and where things were going and where you need to be. Now it's time to make this change because something is stagnant. And in order to get us to act, it does feel like rather than having a lot of options with the eclipses, the corridors narrow so that there's only one thing that you can move, and an urgency is created, and the universe feels like you haven't been active enough, then it's creating that, it just has that feeling. So if you are nothing wrong, we are entering, as I said with the full moon in Aries video I did yesterday, with this full moon, we are entering the energy of transformation. which will increase even more in November. And choices will need to be made. You'll need to make choices. Am I doing this? Am I doing this? Am I sticking to the status quo? I don't know whether everyone has a different capacity to lead change in their lives. Some people will figure out how to try and get to what it is that they are trying to get to in the Aries part of the chart and what it is that they need to release in the Libra part of the chart. Some people may say, no, I'm fine in the Libra part of the chart. I just need to figure out how to make this work. It's just not going to work with the current status quo. And how you get from where you are to the desired outcome symbolized by the Aries North Node eclipses, the last of which was on March 29th of 2025, with the week before and after May 29th playing an important role as well. It's still a process. It's not tomorrow. What you need to do in the interim to get from A to Z, you may feel like the universe is starting to say, you know what? Things feel a lot more terminal. Now, if it's positive, it can be exciting. Oh, I've got to work on that project. I'm going to do this. I'm going to head in this direction. I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this out of it. But in certain cases, it is, we are now processing. We have been spit out at the other end of the month of the eclipses. It is the 16th. We are a week after the month of the eclipses has ended. And whether you experience them quietly or loudly, they're still the eclipses and they still have to be reckoned with. So in summary, so far, two things. The feedback that I seem to be getting with the full moon Aries video is not entirely consistent with how I feel about it. I would have split it into two videos, one on the full moon in Aries, one on the weekly overview, but it is what it is. So it's just my way of saying, if you ultimately find sitting through the full hour of it heavy, and you can feel, you'll feel in the last 10-15 minutes my energy, you'll feel, you'll see, you'll know where I'm losing steam a little bit, because my lesson was that it's a lot to go through. It's a lot to keep talking about in an hour. When I do my readings that are 60 to 75 minutes, I'll talk for the first 20 to 30 minutes, even 35, 40 minutes, but then it becomes a dialogue. You know, I'm not talking just for an hour, hour and a 15, hour and a half. It becomes a lot. And I could tell with that, I was just like, should have split it up. Doesn't mean that the content isn't useful, but it's the full moon content that I think is more useful and relevant. I do think it's important to know that at the end of this week, beginning of next week, Venus trines the North Node. Venus enters Sagittarius tomorrow, the day of the full moon, and Venus trines the North Node in Aries as we head to the end of this week, Monday, to be more precise, next week. Good to know, and that's there in the video. So by all means, listen to it, process it, but just you heard it here, and the video is there. It's posted yesterday. If you haven't seen it yet, you can go in and watch it. And there is stuff there that is worth pondering. But the second thing that I want to say and want to point out is I am getting the feeling, and I'm seeing it in more than one or two or three places, and people are trying to make sense of it. But I just kind of want to make a blanket statement here that if you're feeling a little bit like, why do I feel like change is here? It's because it is here. And it is stressful. And if your feeling is, I know I need to move in a certain, I know I need to find that door that is right for me, whether it is the long-term door that takes me to the end of the first week of June of next year, or whether there are certain short-term doors that I need to open to sustain the change, to get me to where it is that I'm trying to go. The universe is basically saying, I need you to be in motion, in action, and activity. I need you to start to create your own reality in the direction that you want to move in. And I have given enough hints and enough time for preparation, and whether you're prepared or not, we need to start creating that change. And that change can be, if you decide to stay with the status quo, then you've got to make that status quo sustainable and productive. If you know that the status quo is stagnant and you are deciding not to stay in that and are moving towards the North Node in Aries and whichever direction it is and whatever changes you've been trying to create for yourself, as I've been saying since March, April, May, June, July of last year, now the invitation really is there to go ahead and start creating that change. But that means action, preparation on your side. Nothing is going to come in because the changes are too big. Nothing is going to come in, and no fairy god person is going to come in with their army of critter helpers to make all of that happen for you. And yes, it does. There is this sense or this feeling of, oh, as a result of these eclipses, there's an energetic shift. The third thing that I want to mention is to say, especially in yesterday's video, if you're feeling like, what is he talking about with the water sign trines or Mars opposing Pluto or Mars retrograde, know that there are other videos you can reference. I'm not saying this so that you can watch all of my videos. Just know, especially because it's such a dense video in terms of the sheer amount of things it's trying to cover, that there are more details. But I will do a video next week on Mars opposite Pluto, because that is coming up. And with the Mars-Pluto opposition, as a heads up, I talked about this yesterday, but it always does have an element of attack and defense with Mars and Pluto. It is jolting, it is jarring, it can be aggressive, it can be assertive, it can be dramatic, it can be, as I said, violent, but it does not, I'm not talking about, please be clear that I am not advocating that anybody, I always say with Mars, assertive where you need to be, not aggressive. It's not in the nature of someone using a weapon or using violence or using slander or using or being abusive. That's not what I'm referring to with regard to how to harness that energy. It may have more to do with how we assert boundaries, how we might feel like something is happening that we need to address. If it is an event that occurs with Mars opposite Pluto, it could be something sudden and assertive or dramatic in nature. And it also depends on where Mars is in your chart and where Pluto is. If you're Virgo rising and the Mars is in the 11th house, and then the next two oppositions to Pluto will happen when Mars is in the 12th house, it's a very different energy, and the first Mars-Pluto opposition has a very different flavor than if you're Leo rising, and the first Mars-Pluto opposition happens when Mars is in the 12th, but the second to happen when it's in the first. If you're Virgo rising, the first one may require greater assertiveness, and the second and the third may have a slightly more muted quality. If you're Leo rising, the first one, while Mars is in your 12th house, may have a more muted quality, but the second and third, when Mars is in the first house and in Leo, may have a more, again, some of this is specific to what is going on and what changes Pluto has been trying to make since 2008, and how Mars can do something or something occurs to help move things again and complete that transition. And yes, it might seem like there's a combination or a narrative, or there's a connection between what is happening there and what the eclipses are trying to create. Fair. But the feeling of it is clear to us by now, since 2008, what Pluto is actually trying to do and complete in the Capricorn part of the chart. Therefore, whatever happens with the Mars-Pluto oppositions, there's a sense of a replay of energies that takes us back to the end of 2023 and the beginning of 24, December, especially January and February of 24, that is coming up as a sort of peak and culmination now with these Mars-Pluto oppositions. But the feeling of change being upon us in such a way that we're feeling like, instinctively of feeling like the universe is moving us along in a certain direction and requiring, and that is the eclipses. And a sense of, I don't quite know what that door is, but I know I need to get and be in action to find it urgently. And I need to start cleaning up where I'm at. And I need to, the analogy I used in a reading earlier today, it's like you're moving from one room to the other. It's a little bit like moving from one apartment to the other, and there's an overlap. You are setting up the new apartment, and you need to find what that is, and you need to find it. You need to find the right door that's going to open for you. You need to find the right deal. You need to find the right place. It has to work for you. It has to be the next right thing. But at the same time, because there's an overlap, you're also cleaning up, packing, discarding, shedding, dealing with the old apartment as well. And that's the energy that remains at least till the middle of the end of April next year, with stabilizing the new apartment till the end of June, end of the first week of June of next year. But in the meantime, as you deal with these changes, the status quo that we've been dealing with for a lot of us is no longer sustaining us and no longer sustainable. And that's where we're feeling like what was working a month and a half ago is no longer working energetically. And that's the universe's way of saying, no, it's not working, because we are now buckling up and fastening our seatbelts, and we are in that roller coaster of change through the end of the first week of June of next year. And that means that it's a different energy and a different application, a different set of actions and greater urgency and greater acceleration on our parts. Okay? I'm going to title this video kind of the compass, because it has more to do with the feeling of the time and different energies that are at play. Don't get too wrapped up in the Mars-Pluto opposition just yet, even though we'll do a video on it next week, and the energies it'll become interesting to see as we head towards November the 3rd, especially starting next week, what these oppositions may be bringing. They're active. They're within, Mars and Pluto are within a kind of a 5-degree orb with each other. But yeah, if you find yesterday's video starting to get a little dense, it's the full moon part that I think is more important than the weekly overview. But at the same time, just break it up and, see it in 20-minute chunks or however you want to do it. The lesson is mine to not combine a full moon video and a weekly overview. And if I had separated them, I think I would have felt better about it. But I appreciate the feedback and the comments that people are leaving. I can see that it is resonating and it is helpful. I've even seen about seeing it again or repeating it, and I get that because it's dense enough and there's enough going on. The feeling of the portal or the walls closing in, so there's one corridor that you have to walk through and a mysterious door at the end that you can't identify that's going to pull you through next. Absolutely. But also be in conversation with spirit and say, what do you want me to do next? What do you want me to do next? What is my topmost priority? Remember, energetically, sometimes our priorities are the way, staying real with what is going on around us. And what we prioritize in order to tackle immediate issues can sometimes be the universe's way of saying, the universe, our responses may become panicky. Our responses may become anxiety prone because we're dealing with a certain amount of uncertainty. But as human as it is to feel that way, it really doesn't help. And a lot of that anxiety impact maybe is maybe a result of us not moving urgently enough or quickly enough when we actually had the chance and the druthers and the energy to do so. The universe is like, gotta get you to move. But be in that conversation. What do I need to do next? 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 And examine that space between your action and so you can really understand how us being in action can really help create our reality. And more will emerge with regard to what that direction is that we're supposed to move through. But in the meantime, what do we need to do to keep the lights on? What are the interim steps that we need to take that will sustain us and propel us towards whatever it is that we're trying to create for ourselves by the end of the first week of June of next year? There's a set of tasks, there's an arc in that direction, but there's also what do we do to say what is needed, what is needed, what is needed. Do I have the resources for it or not? Do I need to do something to get the resource? How am I creating what can be perhaps a significant change, either to keep the current sustainable and to stop it being stagnant and stagnating, or to move towards or prepare or be ready to move towards the direction that we're trying to move to as we try and create the circumstances for it. And then, of course, I talked about Mars-Pluto opposition and the fact that it typically does have an element of, again, there is an element with Mars and Pluto, yes, of creating change. But it's a different energy. With Mars and Pluto involved, it's much more around the actions that we may feel we need to take in order to liberate ourselves from certain situations, to assist Pluto. Remember, with Pluto, I always say the challenges come when either someone is trying to keep us in a certain place and act and behave a certain way, or if we are really too attached to something that is preventing Pluto from making the transformation that it needs to. A habit, an issue of some sort, to me, what people have been talking about with regard to feeling the urgency, the need for action, a lack of clarity with regard to what the ultimate outcome is, feeling like the universe is trying to move them through it, is much more the eclipses at work. Mars-Pluto will add to the conversation, but that is an energy much more of liberation. And if there's a feeling of an attack from someone else, then it is defense on our part. I'm going to be really careful with that kind of language. As I said, there is no, you can't control when you say something. This is the nerve-wracking thing when you talk to anyone, when you're talking to a friend, when you're talking to reading, when you're doing a YouTube video, what someone takes out of your words. There's no encouragement one more time for us, any of us watching this video, myself included, to when I talk about the Mars-Pluto energy, it is not an invitation towards being abusive or violent or aggressive. Assertive, dynamic, constructive, moving towards our goals. That is the use of this energy, assisting Pluto in his transformation. That is the right direction. Anyway, I feel like I'm repeating myself, and I think I should stop. I hope you found this useful. It's really meant to be an addendum to yesterday's full moon and weekly overview, but it's also kind of a compass and a sign of the times. Um, if you're interested in me taking a look at your birth chart and giving you a reading, whether it is my proper, complete, full reading or a single topic reading, or if you want to avail of, I have these very nerdy $50 30-minute offerings about just Jupiter or just Pluto or just the water sign trines, whatever. If you're interested in offerings and are interested in me looking at my email address is in the description box below. You can use that to communicate with me and I'll get you the information. You can determine whether you want to move forward and how you want to move forward and what all that is about. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you haven't already. Next to the subscribe button is a bell icon. If you hover over that wiggly bell on top, click on that. You'll be notified when I do new videos. Thanks button at the bottom of this video. You can contribute to the channel this way. Comment, like the videos, helps increase circulation. And if you find my content useful, feel free to tell friends about it and get the word out. I will leave it at that. I'm not going to, it's a busy enough week for me it's not, I think looking at the transits that are coming up till Monday, Tuesday, there's really no compelling or pressing reason for me to be back until the weekend, probably Sunday. So know that yesterday's video, this video, and the last few videos I put are, I feel confident in saying they will be a guide. You can of course always reach out to me as well if you need to. It's not like I'm out of pocket. I've got there's plenty, but it's Wednesday. I'm not posting videos for 3 days, and I'm talking about it as if I'm going to be gone for weeks. It's Wednesday. I'll be back doing the next weekly overview on the 20th. In the meantime, trying to have as peaceful and reflective a full moon as possible. And if you've seen my full moon video, full moon conjunct Chiron, you'll know what I mean when I say that. All right, take care.